Taxes and income, lesson 7, other tax forms you need to know about. In this lesson, you're going to learn about what a W-2 form is, the differences between a W-2 and W-4 form, what W-9 forms are used for, and what makes a 1099 contractor different than a regular W-2 employee. There's a crazy amount of different tax forms that may or may not apply to you as you go throughout life. But for the purpose of this lesson, we're going to focus on the 5 most common forms that you need to know about as a young adult. The older you get, the more complicated your taxes can be. On top of that, the tax codes and regulations change from time to time, which is why it's important to be a lifelong learner when it comes to paying taxes. At the end of the day, it's your money. And the better you are at understanding the tax system and what the different forms represent, the more likely you'll be to keep more of the money that you worked so hard to earn in the first place. If you earned more than $600 in a year as an employee of a company, your employer should provide you with a physical W-2 form no later than January 31st. Many employers also have secure portals online that allow you to access your W-2. This form contains critical information that you're going to need in order to file your taxes, such as the employer's information, how much income you earned from that employer for the year, and the amount of taxes that you paid. It's important to mention that you're only going to receive a W-2 if you're a legitimate employee of the company. We talked all about a W-4 form in the previous lesson, but what's the difference between a W-4 and a W-2 form? When you get hired as an employee, you're going to submit a W-4 to your employer, which informs them of how much tax they need to withhold from your paycheck. A W-2 is basically the report of all of that information, which is then submitted to the IRS and the Social Security Administration by your employer. And it lets them know how much money you earned and how much money was withheld for taxes throughout the year. You're also going to receive a copy of this form so that you can use it to report all your information on your taxes as well. If you work for a company as an independent contractor, gig worker, or freelancer, you're being paid as someone that is self-employed, and therefore you're not an employee of that company. If a company pays you over $600 in a year, they're going to ask you to complete a W-9 form, which provides them with the information that they need to report what they paid you to the IRS. If you fill out a W-9, it's important to know that the company is not withholding any taxes from your paycheck. Therefore, you are responsible for paying taxes to the IRS, and you're probably going to owe money to the IRS when you go to file taxes. Instead of receiving a W-2 from that company in January, you're going to get a 1099. A 1099 form is a record of the income that you received outside of being a regular employee. A key thing to remember is that whenever you receive a 1099, it means that a copy was also sent to the IRS. So don't forget to report it on your tax return. There's all kinds of 1099s beyond working just as an independent contractor. For example, if you accept more than $600 in payments for goods or services through a third-party payment system, peer-to-peer apps such as Venmo, Cash App, Apple Pay, etc., there's a good chance that they're going to send you a summary of what you were paid on a 1099-K. You may also receive a 1099 form if you settled a debt for less than you owe, receive money from unemployment, or earn interest on some of your investments. The phrase 1099 employee is a made-up term that some employers use to describe self-employed independent contractors or freelancers who perform work for them. A 1099 employee is absolutely not the same thing as a W-2 employee. And as a matter of fact, it's not an employee at all. If you get hired as a 1099 contractor, you are responsible for paying your own taxes. They're not going to be withheld from your paycheck and paid on your behalf by the company or the client that you're working for. It's your responsibility to set money aside to pay the IRS when it comes time to file your taxes. It's also your responsibility to set money aside for your own retirement, health insurance, etc. There's a lot to learn about being self-employed, and we highly encourage you to do your research so that you fully understand what you're getting yourself into before you sign on for that kind of work. Remember, employees fill out W-4s when they get hired, and they receive W-2s in order to file their own taxes. Independent contractors fill out W-9s when they get hired, and they receive a 1099 to report their taxes. If you continue your education after high school, you're going to receive additional statements that you have to report on your taxes. A 1098-T is a tuition statement form that reports tuition expenses that you paid for college that may entitle you to an income adjustment or a tax credit. A 1098-E is a student loan interest statement. If you made federal student loan payments, you may be eligible to deduct a portion of the interest that you paid on your federal tax return. IRS Form 1040 is a standard federal income tax form that people use to report their income, claim tax deductions and credits, and calculate the amount of their tax refund or tax bill for the entire year. Virtually everybody uses the regular Form 1040. If you choose to itemize your deductions or you have other sources of income, you may have to provide more detailed information on additional 1040 forms. But thankfully, there are people and systems and software that just walk you through this entire process, so it's really not as overwhelming or complicated as it sounds. When it's time to file your taxes, you're going to want to have copies of all of the forms and statements that apply to you in order to make the process go as smoothly as possible. If you work for an employer, you're going to need to have your W-2. If you have multiple jobs, you're going to need multiple W-2s, one from every employer. If you're working as a freelancer or a contractor and you made $600 or more performing a job or a service, you're going to have a 1099 from every company or client that you worked for. Gathering these documents in advance and having them ready when it's time to file your taxes is going to make life that much easier and less stressful. In this lesson, you learned what a W-2 form is, the differences between W-2 and W-4 forms, what a W-9 form is used for, and what makes a 1099 contractor different from a regular W-2 employee. In the next lesson, you're going to learn about filing your own taxes versus hiring a professional to do it for you.